Hello, everyone. This is Sirr's Movies, the official podcast of SirWalker.com. I'm your host, Sterling Woods. Today, I'm joined by
Evan Todd-McCoy.
Sam Miller.
This week, we'll be discussing what we've been watching, followed by a full review. This week's movie is How to Train Your Dragon, The Hidden World, directed by DeBlois. You can find more episodes on Spotify, Stitcher, Pocket Cast, and pretty much any other podcast app. If you'd like to donate to the show to help offset the cost of seeing a new movie each week, you can do so on sirworker.com/sirsmovies. If you'd like to contact us, send us an email to sirsmovies@gmail.com or join the Sirs Movies Facebook group. All right, before we get started, it's been a busy week for a lot of the hosts here, 2 out of 3 anyway. First of all, let's say congratulations to Sam. You got married last week. Welcome back. Congratulations to you.
Thank you very much. And congratulations to you on the new addition to your family.
Indeed. As of yesterday, I had a young little boy. So it's been a busy week. Evan hasn't done anything but sit at home, watch TV. So congratulations to you for that as well.
Thank you. I've been enjoying my leisure time for both of you. I am relaxing for 3.
Indeed. Well, congratulations. Keep up the good work.
Good job.
Indeed. All right. Well, I guess we'll get started with what we have been watching. So we'll go ahead and start us off. Evan, what have you been watching?
So, first one I'll actually talk about the quickest ones first. So the first 2 things were TV shows, sort of. So the first one would be the Battle Angel anime. So it's actually called Gun M. I didn't know that before I tracked it down and watched it finally. But it's the anime version that was made from the manga, and those eventually became the Alita Battle Angel movie that we watched last week. So I watched the anime after we had talked about not ever seeing it, or the manga, and it was all right. Like it wasn't amazing. It's basically 2 TV episodes made out of the manga, and it's short, it's quick. It was even more streamlined than the movie, which I didn't expect. But it's all like, what surprised me about it was everything in the movie, every plot point almost is in that anime. So what they did was they basically took about an hour's worth of material and managed to make a 2-hour movie out of it by adding a few things here and there and kind of just zooming in on a few scenes. So we thought that some of the scenes in the movie were a little bit streamlined, a little too quick, and a little too, they weren't stuck with enough. The anime is even worse for that. But the action in it is super cool, and you can see some of the design choices that ended up influencing the movie.
Yeah, I researched it, and I'm one of the types that if a movie is based on a book, I want to go listen to the audiobook or something like that. But because this is a manga, and because it's already a movie format, I didn't really want to go. I think they do have an audiobook, but it's kind of an adaptation of the manga, and I was just, it's not really my cup of tea, so I'm really interested. But glad you checked it out. And you said, so would you say it's worth watching, or if people saw the original Alita, kind of just stick to that?
Yeah, I think the movie is the best version if it's not the manga itself. I haven't checked the manga out yet. I'm working on getting a hold of that because I'm very interested. But so that would probably be the definitive version still. And as far as I know, unlike a lot of other big series like Akira or Ghost in the Shell, there's not a lot of anime made out of Battle Angel. There's just this 2-episode kind of special OVA thing, which is really unusual. Usually they'll make a series, and there'll be a movie, and it'll be kind of like the series but different. And there's a lot of convoluted continuity stuff that happens when manga gets adapted into anime. At any rate, though, it's definitely not exactly like a movie, and it's not exactly like just an episode of a TV show or a complete TV show either. It's only worth watching if you're very interested in the world and you really want to see where it came from, is what I would say. It isn't exactly like reading the book that a movie was based on. It's kind of almost like, I guess it would be kind of like listening to the audiobook of a book that a movie is based on, maybe.
Interesting. Sam, did you ever check out Alita?
I haven't yet. I'm due to watch it on Sunday.
Yeah. No. Okay. Yeah. Well, if people are interested, they can go check that out. That is the Alita. I'm sorry. What's the name of it actually?
So it's called Gun M, or sometimes called Battle Angel Alita.
Gotcha. Okay. We'll check that out. All right. Check that out if you're interested. All right. What else have you been watching, Evan?
The other short thing, I expected that to be a short thing, but it's Weird City. So the first 2 episodes of Weird City are available on YouTube. It's part of the YouTube Premium. They're trying to get into making their own content and TV shows. I haven't checked out much of it because I will not pay YouTube for Premium, But the first 2 episodes are free for Weird City, and it's a show that's co-created by Jordan Peele and Chris Sanders, I think the name is, and or Charlie Sanders, I think actually. And it's a cyberpunk anthology series but it's comedy. So it takes the ideas of technology that we have now and drives them to an absurd point. The first episode has like Ed O'Neill and Dylan O'Brien, and it's about like basically people are matched up with somebody, but these two guys get accidentally matched up together, and there's like 30, 40 years difference of age between them, but they somehow make it work. So it's kind of like Black Mirror, but funny. It's about 20 minutes an episode or so, and you can catch the first 2 on YouTube without paying a cent, and I really recommend checking it out. I am considering paying for a premium membership just long enough to watch the rest of it. That's how good it is. And it's very funny, very clever. The second episode is Michael Cera and Rosario Dawson, and it's kind of weird and interesting, but it's not quite as good as the first one. So just a warning there.
So I got some big names to come do that one. Interesting.
Oh yeah, the trailer for it, if you check it out, you can see what kind of cast they got for this. And every episode is a different story, like Black Mirror. It's just shorter and a little bit more like, I kind of feel like they made it faster, so the second episode doesn't feel like it comes together as well as the first one does. Like the first one, I'm laughing and I'm right with it, right? I get exactly what they're trying to lampoon and talk about. And the second episode was a little bit more like, what is this even about? But that could be part of its charm, that it's called Weird City for a reason, right?
Yeah. Gotcha. Okay. Well, what else have you been watching, Evan?
So some movies. First one I'll talk about is Necessary Death of Charlie Countryman, which is a movie we talked about last week, and we talked about how I hadn't seen it, and I had kind of this convoluted story for why I'd never actually watched it, even though I was interested in it. I finally caught it. I finally sat down and watched it.
All right,
and
here we go. What did you think?
So I thought it was okay. I thought it was solid. I thought it was mostly pretty good. I could see what you were talking about with the performances. You know, given the cast that is in it, though, like I expected to see a little bit more of like Vincent D'Onofrio, Aubrey Plaza, but they're barely in the movie. They're just bit parts that they probably did as a favor to whoever made the film. Like sometimes that happens. You know, you can get a more famous person either before they're famous to show up in your movie for a minute, or you can get a friend to kind of pop on for a bit and like it's all good, right? So those roles kind of felt like that to me. I thought Shia LaBeouf was awesome. I love Evan Rachel Wood. Westworld is one of my favorite shows, so she's great. That was great. I guess the only thing I didn't like about it was I didn't think the magical realism stuff really went anywhere.
Yeah.
So I didn't think it was necessary, and it felt like it didn't come together or do anything in the movie. So it was kind of just like, this is a super romantic, unrealistic story, and it was almost like signaling that. And I thought it was kind of... It did that on its own. It didn't need that. That's like my one big criticism of it. Otherwise, I thought it was fine.
So I didn't even view it that way.
What do you mean? Like
I viewed it as him having a mental breakdown, pretty much.
Oh,
and,
that's interesting.
And, I mean, because it's pretty blatant that he is in a pretty emotional state every time he sees the ghosts or what have you. And then in the middle of the movie, she kind of points out to him that this is basically your fake make-believe version of something that would happen. You know, you get off the plane, you have some romantic story with some Russian girl or whatever it have you, and she's perfect for you, and you think this is a movie, blah, blah, blah. So in my viewing of it, it is surreal because it's may not be, you know, a real thing. This may just be him, you know,
it's like
losing
a fantasy.
stuff. Yeah. So
I like that take. I like that take a lot. Have you seen this movie, Sam?
You know, I feel like I have seen it, but for the life of me, I can't remember it. So maybe I haven't.
It's the one where I don't want to like summarize the story again because we did that last week, but I'll quickly say it's the one where Shia LaBeouf's mom dies and he goes to Bucharest and he has this adventure with a cellist and her gangster ex-husband, and there's like Mads Mikkelsen is in it, and like Evan Rachel Wood, Till Schweiger is in it. Tarantino fans should know who that is. You know, like there's like a pretty good cast of actors playing these characters, and like the performances are really good, and it feels sort of like one of those that sort of subgenre of movies about young men kind of finding themselves in a foreign land. Like I'd say The Beach is kind of like that too. But I like Sterling's take where it might be about him kind of losing his shit. So one thing I want to say about this movie too is I encourage, since you've seen it, Sterling, and you like it a lot, check out a movie called Jack White. That's Chris Abbott. And it's almost like a serious, gritty take on the same sort of idea. A guy's mom is dying or dead, and then he like loses it and kind of like goes down this kind of like rabbit hole of his own like masculinity and his own fantasies. And it's a lot grittier and more realistic than Charlie Countryman, but it's just as good of a movie. And Chris Abbott is about as good of an actor, I would say, as Shia LaBeouf. So you might enjoy that one quite a bit.
Yeah.
It's not as romantic though. I'll warn you that it's a lot more like it's a lot less sentimental.
Okay.
So the next movies that I watched, in no particular order, The Sisters Brothers, the Western with Jake Gyllenhaal, John C. Reilly, and Joaquin Phoenix.
Yeah.
And Riz Ahmed.
Yeah, I saw the trailers for that. I just had zero interest in watching it. I figured I knew what it would be more or less, and I
thought that too.
Yeah. But go ahead,
It's
tell
not
me
what I
I'm
thought.
wrong.
Well, it's not what I thought it was going to be. I don't know if this is what you thought, but I thought it was going to be kind of a comedy, kind of lighthearted.
No, I didn't
like
think
kind
that
of
at
a
all.
no. Okay, that's what I thought it was going to be from the trailer. It's not, and it made me cry. So it really got under my skin. It's a very, very good movie. It's just really about brothers and brotherhood and what that is. It's about family. It's about like going out there in the world and trying to deal with the trauma of your childhood in a outward way. So it has a lot in common with some other movies that I think deal with sort of the like, I don't know, like I guess the downside of like the macho ideal. And I think the Sisters Brothers kind of does that with the Western tropes. Like these two guys are like outlaws and they kill people and they're whatever, but they're actually kind of like just like they're doing all this stuff and they're kind of messed up. So it's really about that. It's about how messed up they are.
Oh, in my head, kind of speaking about Shia LaBeouf, I pictured it being pretty much Lawless. His movie from I think 2012.
I've seen that.
Yeah,
Yep.
when basically the brothers and that was I think in the 20s or something like that when they're brothers and they do bad things but family relations and blah blah blah. That's kind of pretty much what I pictured it, a serious movie kind of about that has serious but emotional stuff, just a Western, because I know John C. Reilly does kind of serious roles. I pictured that's pretty much what it was, so I feel like I knew what it was gonna be.
You should check it out. It's kind of like that. Did you like Lawless? I had mixed feelings about it.
Well, I thought it was fine. I thought it was worth seeing, but not worth going out of my way to see.
Right. I would say The Sisters Brothers is a better movie. It's certainly more consistent. It doesn't have any really weird flourishes. Like I thought, for instance, that guy, what's his name?
Pierce.
Guy Pearce. Okay, yeah. I thought his character wasn't really like, it was really over the top. It felt like it belonged to a different movie. So there were some uneven bits in Lawless, I thought, but like Sisters Brothers is more consistent. It has like, it doesn't conform to a 3-act structure. So it doesn't like, it feels like it's going to end and it doesn't. And it's like, it kind of has like 5 acts or maybe more. So it's kind of episodic in a way, which is unusual for a movie. It feels very much like an indie movie. Like it's experimental in some ways. And there's some stuff that you think like you'd never see coming that happens, in terms of like characters' fates essentially. And like, it's really surprising in that way. And it goes to a different place tonally than you think it's going to. So it was a pretty complex movie, and the ending definitely got under my skin and made me cry. I'm kind of a sucker for stories about brothers, though. So the last movie that I'll talk about is the most controversial movie that I've probably talked about on this podcast, not in terms of quality, but in terms of like just how it makes people feel. And this is kind of a thing that Lars von Trier does. So I watched The House That Jack Built, which is a movie about a serial killer. And kind of a story that he's telling about time, like he claims are random incidents where he's like killed people. It's always women though, and they're not that random, it turns out. But it's kind of a very literary movie. Like there's this whole thing with Dante's Inferno that if you don't know Dante's Inferno, a lot of the movie isn't going to make sense. So it's like the typical Lars von Trier, sort of antagonistic to its audience, deals with cruelty unflinchingly, feels like a movie that might be endorsing a very nihilistic, very toxic, very evil kind of ethos or morality, but actually is about that morality. So there's this line between endorsement and depiction that Lars von Trier likes to trot up and down in a kind of weird way that nobody else really does, where it's hard to tell sometimes whether his movies are actually saying the things that he's talking about are good. So people have accused Lars von Trier of like lots of things. Being problematic is like the least of them. They've accused him of being misogynistic, a Nazi, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah,
and
the list of his movies there are some adjectives that come to mind.
they're polarizing.
Yeah, he's not a boring filmmaker, put it like that.
And for my money, House That Jack Built is a better film than Nymphomaniac, parts 1 and 2. Probably I liked it better than Melancholia, but my favorite of his recent movies that he's been making since I've been paying attention would be Antichrist, which is a very strange movie. But House that Jack Built is actually pretty good, and but it helps if you know Dante's Inferno when you go into it. And I kind of feel like he as a filmmaker does not care if you follow him down his rabbit holes or not, and that's sort of why he's so polarizing. I thought the movie was very good, but I wouldn't say it was enjoyable to watch. It's too bleak, too explicitly violent in ways that are very problematic, and so there's lots of stuff in it that like it should come with basically with a real trigger warning, not people making fun of sensitive people by saying trigger warning kind of thing, but it should come with one, like a content warning. I mean, it does because it's got a rating, right? But it is really extreme.
I feel like if you're going to watch a Lars von Trier film, you kind of know that's what you're getting into. Though
Yeah,
he's
hopefully.
definitely doesn't shy away from those sorts of in your face, over the top, like real, probably true to life, how things like that would happen. Sort
Right.
of doesn't try and tone them down for the audience.
Well, he's willing to. What I think is interesting about him is, and that what confuses people about him as a filmmaker is that he's willing to engage with cruelty. He's willing to be cruel in a scene, like in a movie that has, say, like a rape scene or a murder or like even a really gruesome accidental death. Most filmmakers will sort of Hollywoodize it a little bit. They'll sort of just make it a little less impactful for the audience, so it's still palatable in some way. He doesn't do that. He strips away all of that stuff and makes it really cruel and bleak and explicit and real, even if it's not really real, because he likes to play with fantasy and flourishes of like surrealism and what I would call magical realism. He does a lot of that stuff too. House that Jack Built has a chunk of that towards the end, without spoiling it exactly. There's definitely, he goes to a trippy place with it. We'll just say that. Have you seen this movie, Sam? It sounds like you're a fan.
I haven't watched this one, no, but I've watched pretty much every other film that he's put out, just because I enjoy his films for what they are, because he doesn't really apologize for what he does. He very much knows that he's problematic, and he knows that his content is going to be polarizing, like you said, but he just doesn't care at all. He's like, this is my work. You can take it or you can leave it. I don't really care either way. I'm still going to make the movie and I'm not going to apologize for it. I think that's why I like his work. Because
yeah, I agree with you. And I like him because he's complicated, and he asks everybody to step up and be complicated too, and like embrace complexity and come to his sort of elevating to his level or closer to it than trying to drag him down to like the level of like, you know, if you're gonna show misogynistic behavior, then you are a misogynist, you know?
yeah.
I guess that's it for Evan this week.
Yeah, that's me.
Indeed. So, Sam, what about you? I know you just got married, so you probably didn't have time for much, but have you seen anything this past week?
Yeah, so I haven't really had a lot of time with carting in-laws around. Well, in-laws, my husband, my parents around, and just basically doing touristy stuff. But I managed to catch Abducted in Plain Sight this week, just because it's been popping up all over social media. And my friend, my best friend from the UK, texted me, and she was like, "Have you watched this yet? Because, man, is this crazy!" And she understated it, I think. Like Sterling
Okay,
said
now I
last
have
week,
to watch it.
you're kind of like, this is not it's not a well put together documentary, but man, do you have to watch it? Like,
Yeah.
So this is the Shia LaBeouf and Abducted in Plain Sight podcast. I'll bring my take next week.
yeah, you are literally just like, if I had popcorn, I would have been sat on my couch with my mouth hanging open and popcorn just falling out of my face, because it's just, you're literally just sat there thinking, how do you think this is okay? Like, how has this man walked into your life and said, I need to sleep with your little girl because my therapist told me so? How did you then go, okay, yeah, sure, just her bedroom's just down there, second one on the right, yeah? Help yourself. I don't get it at all.
Honestly, this is
like,
it's an SNL skit. You know, had this not been documented, had you not been able to prove that this was some stuff that happened in real life, this is something over the top that SNL would make up, and you chuckle at, but you think it was too over the top to be real. So
yeah, especially like you said with the bit with the dad in the car and they're talking about his sexual frustrations. I was sat there thinking, this can't be real. Like, how has he just agreed to this? How has he not immediately been like, get out of my car and never speak to me again? Like, I don't get the thinking. But like you said, yeah, it was less a documentary about like how weird this guy was and more about how the family kind of got suckered in by him. But yeah,
I'm interested to see
that.
whether I'm gonna think like that there's some weird stuff that's not being dealt with in the family. Like I suspect that I'm gonna watch this and I'm gonna view it like oh these guys these people have like repressed undealt with sexual hangups that this guy just kind of came along and exploited. You know, it was less about him convincing the guy to like give him a handy and more about him wanting a handy from a guy maybe all along. Or having like a fluid sexuality that he didn't realize that he had. Because if we go by our Kinsey, right, we all kind of have a more fluid sexuality than when we're generally willing to admit. So I'm wondering if there's a little bit of that where this guy was able to exploit that.
Well, I mean, I think I don't know about that aspect of it, but the documentary definitely shows that they did have some sexual hangups. I mean, the whole reason that they dropped they wrote a letter to the FBI basically dropping the charges was because he said, hey, if you don't drop the charges, I'm going to tell people that you did this. And they were like, well, I don't want the community knowing I gave this guy a hand job, so I'm just going to let the guy that, molested my daughter off, so.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely you got to have some deep, sexual repression, more morality issues going on to even think that's a possibility. But
I think it's interesting because like that's another question too where I'm interested in like watching the movie now that I've heard you guys talk about it and seeing trying to like focus on it and read it through that question of like what has to happen for you to be willing to throw your children's safety under the bus so that you can avoid embarrassment. Because that sounds like a big fulcrum around which this movie and its reception is kind of spinning.
Yeah.
I mean, it's worth watching. So maybe watch it this week, Evan, and next week you can tell us what you thought of it. But
I'm planning on it. I'm going to have to get at it. Now that you've both watched it, I have to.
All right, that's Abducted in Plain Sight on Netflix that 2 out of 3 have seen, so we'll probably follow up again on that next week. What else have you watched, Sam?
So my dad is a huge Queen fan, so we went to see Bohemian Rhapsody this week, even though it came out like ages ago. It's literally come out on like Blu-ray, DVD now.
Yeah, it's on DVD in stores here now.
Yeah, so we went to see that this week, and I just loved it. I can't even put into words how much I loved it. Yeah.
That is, I've heard terrible things. I didn't go see it because I've heard terrible things about this movie. But so I'm surprised to hear that you loved it. Go ahead, Gus. Let us hear the perspective of somebody that loved it.
I love Queen as well, so I love the music, and I thought it told like the backstory of the band really well. And although it was kind of toned down from what Freddie Mercury was like in real life, they can't do some of the things that he did to the band during like their inception and their growing years and stuff. But I was absorbed for the entire film. There was not one moment in that film that I wasn't paying attention to it. I just was completely into it. And the music was done really well. The way that they got I've forgotten his name now.
Rami Malek.
Rami Malek to sound like Freddie Mercury when he's singing. Like the engineering that went into that as well. Because I'm going to talk a bit about the sound here, but it's not Freddie's voice, but it sounds a lot like him. And they've done that by mixing Rami Malek's vocals with some of Freddie Mercury and with an impressionist from YouTube. And they've kind of layered them together to get this kind of like mashed up, oddly natural sounding vocal from Rami Malek for the singing scenes. And you'd think something like that would completely take you out of the moment, but it really didn't. And he played a fantastic part. If he wins an Oscar for this role, I would not be surprised.
Yeah, actually, here he's in the running. Like I said, from everyone I hear, the movie was not good. It's had its issues. I know they talked about him having that like mouthpiece thing in, and so I was never interested in seeing. I mean, unlike you, I don't have the Queen background. Honestly, the Bohemian Rhapsody, the song, I couldn't pick it out of a lineup. I know the very beginning because the video has been put through social media, not social media, but pop culture so many times. Like I know the image, the visuals of the video, but I have no idea what the song sounds like. I don't know the lyrics, and there are people that can quote that thing verbatim, so I couldn't, Queen wasn't a part of my, upbringing. Queen means nothing to me, so I wasn't really interested on that aspect. And the fact that I heard all the negative reviews, I just, I wasn't interested at all. But I don't know, the fact that you love it, I'm actually, at least check it out just to see what it is. And like I said,
think it's got to be.
Yeah.
You kind of got to watch it just because of its context. So like, you can watch it and enjoy it, but like for me, I gotta almost. I'm gonna watch it, but I almost want to boycott it because of Bryan Singer. Even though I love Rami Malek because of Mr. Robot. That show is so good and he's so good. So I'm happy for him, But I've seen one thing that I saw that was interesting about its quality. So I don't like biopics in general, and I particularly don't like music biopics. So I have like a disposition that already like leads me to avoid movies like this and not generally not like them anyway because they're usually pretty formulaic. But I do like Queen. And I grew up with Queen just like you did, and like my mom was a big Queen fan. I knew Freddie Mercury's whole life story when I was growing up, and I probably owe some of my mom's way of telling that story and her tolerance and stuff to the way I came to look at gay men. Like when I was growing up, I didn't consider them to be something like you mock or like avoid or whatever. Like it was something that was like, oh, some people are gay, whatever, Freddie Mercury's gay, or something, right? So like there's a certain amount of awareness of that when I was growing up that I can kind of trace right back to Freddie Mercury, and just speculation that my mom and her friends would make about him and stuff, right? So like, because they grew up with him in a certain sense too. But like one clip that I saw was like the scene where they're all sitting around a table with Aiden, the guy from Game of Thrones, and he's in the movie, I guess.
Oh yeah.
Aiden Gillen is his name. Littlefinger. So they're sitting with him, and there's a massive amount of cuts. There's something like 24 cuts in less than 3 minutes of screen time, which from an editing perspective, that's really weak sauce. And I guess some people were saying that the reason why that is that all the band members would have stipulated how much screen time they would have in the movie, essentially through their actors that played them. And that's speculation, I think. But there's a certain issue that raises with making biopics about people that are still alive, especially when they're involved with the making of the movie. And there's been a few announced lately, like Hulk Hogan is getting a biopic where he's executive producing. So there's a certain amount of which like people are getting now this ability to curate what their legacy is going to be in a Hollywood kind of like condoned, washed, like sort of like it's really important if the movie waters anything down, right? If it does tone down anything, then it's like the legacy of Queen and legacy of Freddie Mercury gets curated by the still living members of the band, and there's just something weird about that, something creepy about that to me. That's just something. That's my 2 cents. I haven't seen the movie yet. Maybe I'll have seen it by next week. But
yeah, I mean, it was very much. The film is very much about Freddie and his life and his involvement with the band and how he essentially is the reason that Queen became such a huge thing, because he was just so into the music and so creative and just wanting to push the boundaries of everything that he did. He was a very flamboyant character, more so in real life than they'll show in the film. Right. But yeah, the actual band members probably came off a lot nicer than they may have been in real life, simply for that reason that they are still alive and are able to edit their past like they want to. But in terms of the film in general, I just loved it. There wasn't anything in the editing that took me out of it. So that really fast-paced cutting in that scene, I think, played more into the pacing of the scene, of the way that they're debating and going on. It's got more to do with the story than what people are making it out to be, that it's a debate about who gets the most screen time. I don't think that's the case at all. But I can't say that I noticed it at all.
Well, I'm glad to hear that, because like I think maybe like that's the danger of pulling a clip out of context and using it to say whatever you want to say. Like if you're saying that the scene is really in context a fast-paced debate, so they're cutting between all these people who are involved in debate, well then there's your reason for doing the scene that way, which I think is like that's the thing that somebody's agenda or their point of view that they're trying to support. They're not going to give you the full context necessarily. So it's good to hear you say that. It definitely makes me more interested in seeing the movie.
Yeah, I definitely recommend watching it. Just without I suppose the tinted view of what people have been saying on social media, because again, that whole thing came around when the film came out about how Rami Malek was refusing to say that Freddie Mercury was gay. But that whole thing was blown out of proportion for me because Freddie Mercury never actually admitted it. He never said it. That wasn't a part of his life. Everyone knew, but he never admitted it to himself. I don't think he was willing to say that to himself. So I think that kind of annoyed me.
I thought that he just didn't use like labels, like he was not into the label of being gay or like what just identifying as a gay man in that period would mean. I kind of thought he was avoiding that and trying to be like kind of like David Bowie in a way, where David Bowie like refused to really be like pigeonholed in any way, right? I kind of felt like that's like, but I don't really know, like, but I always thought that was kind of the vibe, right? Like that it wasn't like. Gay might not be a big enough word actually to encompass Freddie Mercury. You know what I mean? Like that kind of might not have been fair to use, but we kind of use it now just because it's easy to parse for us with our current way of using terminology. And who knows, in 20 years there might be a better term for like whatever, you know. But you get into a point where labeling people posthumously, like when they're dead and they can't speak for themselves, is kind of shitty anyway, right?
Yeah, definitely. I'm kind of hoping that in 20 years' time we won't need labels and people can just go back to being Freddie Mercury. You are who you are. Let's just accept that and let's not put labels on everything. That's kind of the way I'm hoping the world's going to go. So, but that's a lot
of fighting before we get there.
Yeah, that's a whole different topic for another podcast, I think. So moving on from Bohemian Rhapsody, the only other thing I started watching this week was the Ted Bundy tapes, just because I find serial killers fascinating, and especially Ted Bundy because he was such a charismatic person to be able to get as far as he did. So I haven't finished that yet, so I can't comment too much, but so far, very interesting.
Yeah, I've heard a lot about that one. It's one of those things where I just haven't had time to sit down and watch it, but... And especially with that and the what's the movie coming out with Zac
Wicked.
Zac Efron.
Extremely Wicked and something like that.
Yeah. So I mean, I figure I'll wait till they're both on Netflix and I'll just watch them together.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Definitely.
Okay. All right. Well, that is it for what you've been watching. So I guess that goes to me last,
but not least.
I watched. Indeed. I watched Creep first and foremost. Evan got me thinking about horror movies, so I figured I'd sit down and watch one of these. This has been sitting on my Netflix queue for forever. It's a 2014 movie starring Mark Duplass. We talked about him a few weeks ago. I actually heard good things about this one, so I wanted to, sit down, check it out. I think it was Tuesday night. Wanted to watch a horror movie in the dark and see what happened. I really didn't like this one. It felt very amateur hour to me. It felt like a college class movie or something like that, where you got to get together with a buddy and make a film for your class project or something like that. The script was like it just seemed amateur hour. I don't want to rant too much about it. I think you saw this and liked it, Evan. Is that right?
Well, yeah, but I mean, like, the Duplass brothers come from, like, the mumblecore tradition, it's called. So, like, there's a certain, like, what you're saying about it feeling like a kind of like a college student movie, it does feel like that. You're right. You're completely, totally right about that. But it's kind of on purpose. It's like a stylistic choice. They're basically doing, mumblecore is basically like them attempting to, like, make movies. Some of them are comedies, but some of them are horror movies, too, where they're trying to make movies where it's kind of like it's way stripped down in terms of like the Hollywood cinema feel of it. So it's really a lot of handy cam, a lot of like close tight angles, the way like you're shooting it with a camera that you're holding, and the audio equipment is like basically a mic taped to your shirt, So essentially cheap movies made on a college student budget, and the writing is usually to reflect how people kind of talk more than like how dialogue's typically written. So I'm hit or miss with those movies. Some of them I really like, some of them I don't. I thought Creep was really good, though, mostly because I thought it, like, Mark Duplass was very different in the role and was actually really, really creepy. But more from you about this.
I 100% disagree. It felt so, I don't know, like I could see through it when I never felt like I was I never felt immersed in the movie. I always felt like I was watching some kids do a college project. I know I hate to say it again, but it just felt that's all I got watching this. I never felt immersed. I always felt I was kind of laughing at it, and the twists and turns it took. I just like I said, it felt very cheap. And not cheap as in it didn't cost a whole lot of money to make, but cheap as in bottom shelf at the Blockbuster back in the day.
Harsh.
Just some random movie you picked up. Yeah. So I
Yeah.
mean, I hate to. I'm a big fan of Mark Duplass. I like all the stuff like a lot of stuff he's done. But this, I don't know. Like I said, the only reason I saw this is because I heard good reviews about how creepy it was, but I never got that vibe. But I understand that that's what he was kind of going for. He was kind of being the creepy weird guy, but it always felt like this is a character that was written as a creepy weird guy rather than a creepy weird guy, if you got to get the difference. And there's actually a Creep 2, came out 2017. I have zero interest in watching that. So I feel like it's
please watch that one.
I feel like it's going to be the same movie, but then they're going to throw a twist on it, and maybe because it's basically the same premise from IMDb. So I assume.
Let me tell you, watch it.
Let me just say. So
All right.
the basic plot of this one is guy answers a Craigslist ad for he wants to some guy hired him to go out and videotape him for a day for reasons, and things go left from there. And I feel like Creep 2 is the camera guy turns it on his head, and things go differently than the first movie, which obviously I feel like so maybe that's wrong, but that's all I feel like I'm going to get from the second one, and didn't care enough. The first one wasn't good at all, so I'm not going to see it. But yeah.
All right. It is different. Like when you say they throw a twist, you're right. They throw a twist at it, but it's actually a few twists. And the character that he's with this time isn't a dude who's like perplexed. It's a woman who is very quick to pick up what's going on, and so it becomes a game of cat and mouse between the two of them. And it goes in some really unexpected directions, like really unexpected. And I thought Creep 2 might have been better than Creep 1.
If that was Creep 1, I might be interested in seeing Creep 2, but because Creep was so bad, I don't care enough about Creep 2.
Fair enough. At least you tried. At least you gave it a chance.
Sorry, I know we're hogging the conversation, Sam. Did you check out either one of these on Netflix?
No, I haven't seen Creep. I've read a bit about it, so I do know a little bit about the story itself. And I was actually going to watch it this week. I started pressing play on it and then decided that it was probably too long for the time of day. But
good decision.
But I do
think you'll
actually
like it.
want to watch it because I could be wrong here. Evan, you might know, but was there actually a script for this film? Because I feel like they actually filmed it like scene by scene. I think they just kind of gave people vague directions and said, just take it where you will.
Yeah, I'm willing to bet that was the case. They do mumblecore and adjacent kind of stuff does do that. Like they'll do things like they'll write you a character like like 3 sentences, and then you just create dialogue, you improvise it. So it's kind of like comedy improvisation where you're allowed to ad lib a bunch of jokes, and they kind of keep the one that works the best. But it's more like entire scenes of dialogue are done in a really like a very like actors studio kind of way, where like because these guys are all like the Duplass brothers and some of the people they work with, they're actors. Like they really like they're almost like stagey kind of actors, I think. And they like to do stuff like that. They're drama nerds, so they'll do weird things with movies. Like I don't know if you guys have seen like Your Next or some of those kind of like some of the other horror movies that these guys are all kind of involved with, but there's a little bit of that too in those kinds of movies. And the Duplass brothers, they had a show on HBO for a couple seasons that had a little bit of that as well, but I can't remember what that show was called.
Yeah, I thought Your Next was overrated as well. But again, I'm not the horror guy, so maybe that's
well.
why.
Creep is a weird choice for a horror movie because it's not particularly scary, and it does invite you to laugh at the character as much as be scared of him. Like, because you're not sure if he's full of crap though, like for most of the movie, and like the main you're with the main guy in it who's like talking to him, and the main guy isn't sure either what to make of him, and he'll like Duplass does this thing where like he's almost more like puckish or more like a trickster. Like he'll run down this branch of like, I'm this guy, I'm like this, and then he'll pull it back and act a completely different way. And I kind of thought that stuff was sort of fascinating, and I love the ending, so I don't know.
100%.
You didn't like it though. Yeah, you didn't like it.
Indeed. Okay, well that's Creep on Netflix, 2014 Creep, because there are like 6 different Creeps when I Googled it. But yeah, so
what else you got?
Next, I have seen True Detective season 3. Never
All
cared
of it?
enough to go back and watch 1 and 2. Yep. The final episode comes out Sunday, so I don't know how it ends. So I'm excited to see that. But I've seen episodes 1 through I believe it's 7 or 8, whatever it is, up to the last one. So I'm looking forward to seeing how it ends. And I'll say,
Have you been liking it?
I'm looking forward to seeing how it ends. I'll say, I like detective stories, well, books, and mostly because the story makes me curious to see, who done it or whatever. And that's pretty much where I'm at with this one. I feel like it may be a little bit too long. I don't know if I care to kind of, I don't know if what they're doing with it. It is interesting, but I feel like it's very reminiscent of what season one did. And, I guess because season one got all the accolades, of course, that's why they did it. But I think it is a little bit too long, and I don't know. I want to see how it ends, and I'll applaud it, when they wrap it up, and I'm sure I'll be shocked or what have you. And, oh, that's awesome that they did that. But I don't necessarily know if it is a, masterclass, great season of television, which everybody lauded season one to be. But again, I couldn't watch all of season one because it's a little bit too boring for me. So maybe, again, I'm just not the demographic for it.
Big disagree, man. That season one is so good. Have you watched any of this, Sam?
I've watched season one. That was like hands down one of my favorite TV series that I'd seen for a long time. Was season one. I started watching season two and kind of got bored halfway through, so I haven't finished it. So if season three is reminiscent of season one, I might actually like it. So I might check it out.
Season three is my problem with season three. I haven't watched all of it. I've seen about half of it. It's the same thing that Sterling's saying, where it's reminiscent of season one in some of the wrong ways. Like it's like one step forward, two steps back, which I don't love. Like season two is a failure on every level except for, to me, I didn't like it as much as season one, but I'm a big Michael Mann fan, and season one was basically Nick Pizzolatto and Cary Fukunaga doing David Fincher. Like they were trying to make a Fincher-like show, and then in season two it was a Michael Mann-like show. So they ditched all the occult stuff, and they got into like, let's do like basically like a big vertical slice of all this different criminality and police kind of stuff happening in this city, and like it's L.A. and it's L.A. at night, shot in digital. So it felt very Michael Mann-ish, and I like that about it because I like Michael Mann stuff. So season two was all right for me. But then they overcorrected with season three, and it feels like just a rehash of season one. But the performances are on point. Like everybody's on all cylinders in that show. So that's a good reason to keep watching it for me. I guess it's probably. Would you say that's what carried you through it, Sterling?
Yeah,
like,
agreed. I think the acting is great. I think
Yeah.
Mahershala Ali proves why he's the next big thing here, or maybe the big thing now.
He's
with
fantastic,
the Oscars and whatnot. So I think the acting is great. I think the story is just enough to make me want to know who done it. But I don't think it's necessarily, as I said, great TV that's well written and worth watching. I think it's more the directing style and the acting is what keeps you here. But like I said, I guess this is why it's a what's the word I'm looking for? Anthology type thing, to where each season is a separate thing, because obviously it's just so, you just feel it so much more that this is going to be one season of a thing, and we wrap up and there's nothing left to tell. And I guess you didn't necessarily know that at season one, so you didn't, I guess it was a little bit more exciting kind of watching it develop. But now that you kind of know what you're doing here, and because this season is so reminiscent of season one, I don't know. As I said, I think I'll definitely tune in Sunday to find out how it wraps up, and I think I'll, stash that in my memory drawer and never go back to look at it again.
Yeah. I think it's interesting you talk about the directing, because the director of the first 3 or 4 episodes is Jeremy Saulnier, and he made like Green Room and Blue Ruin and Hold the Dark. He's awesome. His movies are amazing.
Yeah.
And so, but he had a creative split with Nick Pizzolatto, I guess, after a while of working together, and he left. And then the same thing happened with Cary Fukunaga in season one. Him and Nick Pizzolatto ended up not getting along. And I really think it's not the writing that makes the show. Season one would not be as good if it wasn't for Cary Fukunaga's direction. Even though Nick Pizzolatto is really good at some of those hard-boiled detective cliches and stuff, and he's doing a little bit of interesting things, interrogating some of that stuff, he also falls on his face a lot. Like, he's not a perfect writer, and he's kind of a problematic person in general. He's kind of sexist and like has some opinions that are a little like old white manish, So I don't always love what he's putting down.
Indeed. Okay. Well, that's it for True Detective season 3. Looking forward to seeing what happens, and I'll probably, follow up next week as to what I thought if I'm not too busy with this newborn. So last but not least here, I did watch all of Escape at Dannemora. That is Showtime's, I guess, miniseries, of, basically an escape at Dannemora prison. Prison escape. It's basically documenting what happened. Benicio del Toro, Patricia Arquette, Paul Dano. I love all three of them. Well, not necessarily Patricia Arquette because I haven't seen her forever, but definitely Benicio del Toro and Paul Dano. Love seeing what they're doing. So I definitely tuned into this one because I've heard great things, and it was actually directed by Ben Stiller. And everybody was, praising how well it was directed, especially because we don't expect something like that from Ben Stiller. So, yeah, tuned in. I think it got some Emmy noms or won some Emmy, something like that. So, yeah, but lots of rants and raves about this one, so I want to tune in and check it out. I don't think it was amazingly directed, but I think because it's Ben Stiller, it gets those extra boost points. And I think it was well directed. I think this is solid directing. If this guy does movies or whatever, I think nobody will complain about it, but I don't think there's necessarily those special directorial touches that, some of those big name directors are known for. I think this is more of I think he's more like a Ron Howard type of director where he's very solid, but you don't necessarily see his voice in the movie. So, yeah. I mean, the story is pretty straightforward. I didn't want to read it because obviously it's a real life story, so you can Wikipedia what happened, but I didn't. I just kind of wanted to watch it and see what happened. It invests you in the characters for the prisoners, and you're interested in seeing the escape and see what happens and how it's resolved and whatnot. It definitely gives everybody both sides. It makes them likable and shows them, hey, why they're in prison, and they're not necessarily great guys. And there's a insider that helps them out. It definitely shows both sides of that character as well. So I don't know. I think I appreciated it. I thought it was interesting, but I think it was a example of what he can do. And that's pretty much kind of how I feel about it. Did either one of you check this out?
I want to, but I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, same. I haven't seen it yet, but I've read a couple of articles about it because the lady that the story's based off is basically denying everything that happened and says that Ben Stiller's exploited her or something. So that's what I was quite interested in. So I might check it out.
Yeah, I mean, it's all documented. She went to jail. So, I mean, I don't know what exactly he could be portraying that she didn't do, but hey, that'd be interesting to hear her side of it because they definitely show her not to give too much away, at the beginning they show her kind of as a easily manipulated kind of character, and by the end, in more or less the twist of events, they show her as a bit of a manipulator herself, which is, it makes sense if in real life she was that type of person, so they want to show it, but in the sense of the show, it is kind of a odd left turn to just, episode 6. Oh yeah, she's this type of person. So I don't know, like I said, I think the directing was solid, but I don't know if it was necessarily needed to be made. I think this was just a, exhibition of him putting on what he can do.
Does anything need to be made though? There's the question for next week's contest.
Yeah, I guess that's too philosophical for my blood, but yeah. Okay. Well, that is Escape at Dannemora. If you're interested, check it out. If you've seen it, let me know what you thought. And that is it for what we've seen. We're going to go ahead and get into the full review now. But before we get there, just want to do a bit of housekeeping. If you noticed last week's episode, there were random points where the word apple was shouted out instead of another word. Thought that was a bit amusing. We're trying to, as I said, we're still working on the format of the show. So trying to keep it from being explicit, but it obviously did stand out a little. So I don't know, you guys, you're the listeners, you let us know what you think. If you're okay with a little, language here and there, let us know. If you want it to be completely PG, let us know as well. I think for now, we're okay with a little bad language. So if you got some kids in the car, watch out. So just a heads up about that.
I try really hard not to swear. I'm sorry, guys.
Indeed, and we appreciate it. All right. Another, bit of funness. Do want to get a little participation going with you listeners out there. As I said, did have a son this week, and everybody in my life knows how much I love Black Panther. even when my son was born, I changed out of my jeans into some Black Panther pajamas because that's what I wanted to be wearing the first time I welcomed my son into the world. Big fan. But so I actually got a gift when my son was born from a friend of mine, Black Panther DVD. And I actually own Black Panther digitally as well as the steel book. So yeah, big fan. Don't necessarily need it, but I appreciated the gift. And I figured instead of it racking up, dust on my shelf, I would give it away to one of my listeners. So we discussed it on the podcast, and we thought a fun activity, because everybody, Evan in particular says, I hate animated movies. We'll find out a little bit, a few minutes from now, whether I hate all animated movies. But since we did discuss a few animated movies before on the podcast, we figured we ask you guys listening in, what is your favorite animated movie and why? I want you guys to write in either to sirrsmovies@gmail.com or join the Facebook group and just make a little post on there. Just, not an essay, just maybe, a few sentences or a paragraph, something like that. Just whatever you feel comfortable with writing in what your favorite animated movie was and why. We're going to read over all of them and we're going to pick a winner. We'll announce that on next week's podcast, and the winner will get just contact us and we will mail you out a DVD of Black Panther. So, yeah, look forward to that. Hopefully you guys get involved and we hear from a few listeners. So I know we got a decent chunk. So all you guys listening, if you guys want the Black Panther, write in and we'll talk about it next week. All right. Well,
we'll read the best one. I'll read the best one in my best reading voice.
He'll give us a dramatic reading.
And Sterling will tell you why he hated that film in full detail.
Yes. Oh, yes. I'll tell you why you're wrong. All right, well, that is it. So up next, a full review of How to Train Your Dragon, The Hidden World.
This is Berk, son. It was the home of your grandparents and their grandparents before them. But out there, beyond the edge of the world, lies the home of the dragons. And I believe it's your destiny to one day find this hidden world.
All right, that was from the trailer for How to Train Your Dragon, The Hidden World, newest animated movie by DeBlois. I hope I'm saying that right once again. All right, Evan says, I am an animated movie hater, so I'm going to let him start first by gushing at how much he loves this. You loved it, right, Evan?
No, and I'm going to pass it on to Sam, actually, because she's the resident. Like the Lego movies for me, that is How to Train Your Dragon for her. So I think Sam should start us off this time.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to probably blow you guys out of the water and say I didn't overly like it that much.
Oh, wow.
Which is saying a lot because...
Me neither.
Like you said, How to Train Your Dragon series for me is the same for you as the Lego movie. As far as animated movies go, I could watch them any time of day, but with this one, I was kind of waiting for it to do something different, and it didn't happen. And I was kind of sat there waiting for it, and I was like, in a minute. No, in a minute. No, oh. And then I got to the end of the movie and I was like, oh, so we're not doing something different this time. Okay, that's fine.
Yep.
I mean, I still enjoyed it, but it was not my favorite How to Train Your Dragon movie. As far as plot goes, it seems like they've had the same plot for every single movie that they've done. And I was hoping that with it being the hidden world, we'd have more hidden world in it, and there wasn't. So I know you guys were hoping that I'd come into this really positive and give you something to like fight back against me with, but I think we're probably all going to agree on this one that it was kind of a little bit boring.
I think I thought that it would be you and me versus Sterling this for this episode, but no, I'm with you on most of what you said, especially the bit where like waiting for it to do something interesting or different. It's what I would like to call a rehash quel. It just rehashes the best parts of the first two movies, like literally on its face, and it's not just the callbacks and jokes, because of course they're going to do that. It's literally plot points and set pieces. We've already seen everything that's in this movie almost. And they just really, if it's going to be the end of the trilogy and how we're going to send off this like very beloved animated series, it needed to be stronger, it needed to be bigger, it needed to be bolder, and it needed to really have a better villain more than anything. I'll return to that later, but that's going to be my biggest criticism of the movie, I think, is that the villain is very, very weak.
Yeah, no, I agree
But
completely.
we've been talking, Sterling. Is this the weird one? Did you like this movie? Are you going to take us on? Is this the Upside Down?
Yeah, so plot twist, it is you guys against me because I like this.
Of course you did. Of course you did.
Well, okay, so let me add a caveat to that because the first half of this movie, I was out. I was like, this is what I expected to be. I have so many issues with this. I'm not feeling it. And then the end of the movie where it kind of got going, I have flaws with that. I can take that second half apart as well. But I think my overall, it's just when I walked out the movie theater, I walked out thinking I had a good time. I put it like that. So
yeah, it's not a bad movie or anything.
I think it was full of flaws, but I think when I'm talking about a kid's movie, this is what I'm talking about. I think kids are going to enjoy it, have a good time, see flying monsters doing silly things, and they're going to walk out thinking I enjoyed myself. And I think that's what I got out of this. I think this is full of issues, and I'm going to, when we get to spoilers, and probably before we get to spoilers, I'm going to take it apart for all kind of issues I had, but I think at the end of the day, I think I enjoyed watching this, and I walked out, feeling, with a smile on my face or what have you. So, I think I'm probably more positive on it than both of you, even though I have plenty of issues with it.
Well, I think there's something interesting to that because, like I think both Sam and I have a certain amount of investment in the series. I'm watching this movie in the context of really enjoying the first two, particularly the second one, which I thought did what sequels should do, which is go back to the first one and broaden everything out, dig deeper into the pathos and the emotional characters, come up with better connections, more relationship stuff, and then also make a bigger splash with the universe and the world, build it out a little bit. And I thought the second movie did all that, and the third movie doesn't do anything with it. So that's the context for me. But if I'm reading you right, you didn't have that necessarily, investment. So the third movie might land pretty much like the first two did for you, which is fine.
I thought the first movie was okay. I thought people gave it more praise than it deserved. I thought the second movie was bad. I didn't really enjoy that at all. So this one was a nice, pleasant surprise for me. I guess that's kind of how I felt. I guess if I went into this loving the first two, I definitely would get, let down with it. But so I guess that's kind of the difference here. Why I enjoyed it probably a little bit more than you two did.
Well, one thing that kept it back for me, though, before we'll get into this more in spoilers, but I think the movie is actually symbolically problematic. It's even a little bit racist. And now I thought that was going to be a joke. I thought we were going to joke about it's racist because Toothless, his mate is a white dragon. But I thought that was going to be just a fun joke we were going to do. But no, I think the movie is actually a little bit racist. And I'll get into that more in the spoilers.
But Sam, I'm going to let you get your 2 cents because I'm going to spend about 4 minutes going in on this one.
Okay.
I got a list. I got a whole list too of things to complain about. So
Yeah, I mean,
we're hoping that you'll give us some positive.
Yeah, I want you to say why we're wrong, so I can, I can.
I don't know. Can you? Because maybe your list is as big as ours.
I'm here kind of trying to think of counter arguments to what you guys are saying, and I mean, as far as the racist side of things go, I mean, I'm going to caveat whatever I say in this podcast in that I come from an island that is predominantly white, so my experience of racism is. I'm probably very ignorant on it in that I don't have that experience in the same way that you guys do, and maybe that I obviously need to educate myself more on the struggles of people of colour and how that works in the industry and everything like that, and I'm willing to learn and obviously you guys will be able to tell me a lot more about it. So when it comes to looking for themes like that in films, it's not something I notice. And obviously that's something that I need to work on.
For a movie like this, it's really not it's not I wouldn't notice it or care unless it smacks you over the face with it. And it doesn't really, it's not extreme or anything, but it's there. And there's a little bit of it in the second movie too that I waved off, and I'll talk about that a little later. And in this movie, it kind of becomes a pattern. So we can talk more about that later. But I get what you're saying, and it's really cool that I think it's cool that you're, giving a kind of this is my context, this is where I'm coming from on those questions,
Yeah, and just that
no,
it's not something I have
saying.
Experience with. So when it comes to discussing it, I feel very, I guess, uncomfortable. It's not somewhere I feel comfortable having discussions because it's. And obviously, it's something we do need to discuss because it does make me uncomfortable as a white woman. So. So yeah, I'm all ears to hear about the struggles and everything.
It should just be a side piece for this movie. But
Yeah.
Sterling, what do you think?
Well, no,
about that?
I think it's actually interesting. This being the multinational podcast that it is. Everybody's from somewhere different. I'm the only American. Here. Well, Sam is soon to be American as well. I don't know if you'll claim it, but on paper anyway. But
Yeah.
yeah. So because just here, race is a lot more. I don't know. It's a lot more blatant in your face. It's talked about all the time. We've got a terrible history of racism in this country,
Yeah.
and it's always talked about in the news. And Hollywood has a terrible history of racism. So, that's just something. It's more obvious to me. It's something I'll think about more often. And I can't, necessarily fault you, either one of you, from coming from a place where that's not the case. I don't expect you to look at it through that lens because this is where I live and this is the life I have. So
Yeah.
obviously I'll look at it a different way than you do. And so far as this movie, I was really hoping this was going to be a joke, just like you, Evan. Looking at the trailers and the posters, seeing the Night Fury with a white Night Fury, I was like, okay, so they're going to somehow make this make sense, and it's going to be funny, but it's not going to be the racism I think it is. But I hate to look at a kid's movie and shout about racism, but come on, It's just, this is not a coincidence. This is not an accident. This is not a funny surprise. I 100% believe in my heart somewhere along the lines when they were writing the story, a mock-up for a black version, a black female, Night Fury, Toothless, was drawn up, and somewhere on the food chain somebody says, we can't do that. I don't want two black Night Furies looking at each other. It's just the optics aren't going to look right. I think we have to make the Night Fury white. And why a Night Fury would be white, that doesn't make any sense. And there's not even a line in the movie about it. There's not a...
Oh, they just,
There's not a, we captured the rare albino Night Fury or something like that. There's nothing. It's just, you caught a female one. Awesome. So are we, do they expect us to believe that all female Night Furies are white? But, not to get into spoilers, but later on in the movie, it's proved that that's not the case. So it's just, it was a purposeful choice to make the Night Fury white, and just because they didn't want the optics. There's no other explanation for it.
I'm probably showing my ignorance here, but when I was viewing it and when I was watching it, the fact that she was white and he was black kind of tied into the love theme of the movie to me, in that a relationship is kind of yin and yang. So they were kind of like a literal representation of yin and yang, and that they balance each other out, and that's why. But I must have missed the bit where there was a black Night Fury or something. I don't know.
Well, it's a context thing. Like, it's like there's a history of well, you can explain this, Sterling. You explained it to me one time. So
well, hold on, I'm not even done with I got about 4 minutes to go on that. It's just because even in the first movie, they're talking about how you can't see them, because they're all black, you can't see them sneak up on you and blah blah blah, So how does that make sense with there being a white one? And then throughout the movie, when they're first introduced to us, she's literally I'm not giving too much away in spoilers, but she's literally portrayed as the white seductress that is played in lots of different, blaxploitation and, type era films. She's literally that character. We'll get into, I was trying to do this rant pre-spoilers because it is not all pre-spoiler, but I'm going to get into it a little bit post-spoilers, but just the optics of what this is and the decision that they made it, and the fact that they didn't even try to make a reasoning for it. It's clear that it's done because of the racial politics of the racial optics. Every time you turn on the TV, I think kind of what the point you were making, Sam, it's a little bit. It is true, but it is a little bit problematic as well because, like I said, a lot of TV shows will try to have interracial couples, and they'll try to, have a black man and a white woman with a black man, showing how okay that the company is with interracial couples and blah, blah, blah. But at the same time, what's wrong with a black man and a black woman? And a lot of times in movies, it'll be a black man and a light-skinned black woman, or a white lady or something. It's very like Jordan Peele's Us got a lot of praise because the two main characters are both black and both dark-skinned, and that's rare. That's something you don't often see. And same thing with Black Panther. It's just it's not something you often see. So the fact that Hollywood tries often to I think it's more socially acceptable, quote unquote, to see race mixing than it is to just see a black couple on TV. And I know that's thinking way too, well, I'm not going to say thinking way too deep, but I know that's a heavier layer than what is meant for this animated movie. But the fact that it is what it is, they decided to make a white Night Fury, and then even in something, this is from the trailers as well, how they, when they first see her, they look at each other and what's the main character's name?
Hiccup.
Yeah, Hiccup. He goes, it's a bright fury, and then Valka, what's her?
Her name's Astrid.
Astrid. Oh, goodness. Astrid says, light fury. And she says, and he goes, yeah, that's definitely better. Neither one of them thought to say white fury for the white fury,
Yeah.
you know, and that's not a coincidence. And the fact that they point out it so obvious that white rhymes with light and bright, but neither one of them said white because that's not something that's okay to say. And clearly, if we were looking at it, the most obvious thing to be would be white fury because it's a white, you know, it's just, I don't know, it's so problematic on so many different levels. And like I said, I walked out the first half of the movie, that was a big problem for me, but by the end, I kind of let it go and I just enjoyed the animated movie. And so I'm gonna take a breath, and I'm gonna, like I said, I did enjoy it when I walked out of it, but that is a huge issue that was very problematic for me. So I'm off my soapbox, and you guys can go from here.
It's context too, like that's what you're saying. Like context, the context of like how race is done in Hollywood is sort of where all this stuff is drawn from. So there's going to be people listening to this probably that they're going to think like, well, they're dragons, they're not even humans. What are you guys talking about? Well, I'm sorry, but there's certain coding. There's a semiotics happening here. There's a symbolism with what Sterling's talking about. And one of the weirdest things about the movie is how sexualized the Light Fury is. It's bizarrely erotic how she moves, these like, for a dragon in a kid's movie, for a big lizard fish, you know, she's very eroticized. It's very strange. And actually it was really funny when I was watching the movie in terms of theater experiences, because there's these guys behind me, a whole row of dudes who were like either teenagers or like, you know, like young adults, and they were all like really into that. Like they were catcalling the dragon. They were saying some really inappropriate things. I don't know if they were drunk or what was going on, but they got it. They understood.
Scene in here, you know.
I know. Yeah,
there's
very Lion
like,
King style
world.
Implied mating scene. There is. So there's a lot of weird stuff going on. But like, here's the thing: like, that's not even the only example of race issues in this movie. It is not a spoiler to describe the villains a little bit, so I'll say that it's very strange that the all-white Norse-themed Burkians are in peril from a bunch of people that are coded Slavic in the second movie, but the voice was a black dude. Jimon Hunsu plays a guy named Drago Bloodfist, which is a very Slavic-sounding name, and he's brown, and he looks different, and he's got a black dude's voice. He's the bad guy. There's no other character that looks anywhere near like him, and he's the bad guy. Movie 3, we've got the Grimmel, the main white guy who's a bad guy, and he's got kind of a German / Slavic / Russian accent, and then his cronies, the other villains, they're all coded by the armor they're wearing as being East Asian, Chinese, Korean, Mongolian, and they're coming to assault the white world. That there's nothing it's not intentional. I don't think, like, they weren't sitting there being like, "Ooh, we're gonna like talk about, you know, immigration with this movie." I don't think they were trying to do that necessarily, but it's not an accident either. There's something going on there that maybe the filmmakers didn't even realize they were accidentally, because that's usually how this stuff happens. It sneaks out of what you use tropes in a careless way, and all of a sudden you're using tropes in a way that make you look like you're including dog whistle kind of content that you didn't even mean to do. And I'm sure that the movie makers didn't mean this, but it's in there.
And America Ferrera is the only person of color on the whole IMDb cast list. I'm sure if I hit the extended cast list, I'd find some names in there somewhere, but every other one is a white face. So it's just, like I say, it's problematic for that reason. It's problematic for, you know, the black and white reasons. Just all of that in there. I don't want to, like I said, I don't want to go too deep on this. I've said my piece. We've already 2 or 3 people have already clicked off the podcast because they don't want to hear it. So it's there.
They need to hear it. Those people are the ones who should be listening.
Okay, moving on.
Yeah. New topic.
Yeah. Pre-spoilers. Anything else you guys want to talk about?
Sam, you got any good things, like any things you liked about the movie that you can talk about, like even its look, like, because I got a little bit of that, but not much.
I loved the soundtrack. I love John Powell's work. His scoring is always fantastic, and in these films, he really does a fantastic job. I mean, that's the one thing I genuinely love throughout the entire series of these films is that his scoring and his orchestration of the way he brings emotion into his soundtracks just really emphasizes some of those storylines in the films. And I can't get enough of listening to his soundtracks. Even when I'm not watching the film, I have them on my Spotify, so I'm listening to them as I go along, and that's the one thing I genuinely love about this, and that he's got recurring themes. He's got like a leitmotif with Toothless and Hiccup's relationship. He's got a recurring theme that he brings in with them too that I love, that always makes me tear up when I hear it. Like, that's the one thing I genuinely love about these films, which has genuinely nothing to do with the plot of the film or anything like that. But I just can't get enough of it. That's the one thing
That's
really
fair
love.
game though.
Yeah.
I agree with you. The music is huge.
Yeah, I want to talk like the flying scenes. The score really makes you feel it. You really feel like you're soaring, and it's beautiful. And I don't know how you guys saw it. I saw it in Dolby, and I used to want to see IMAX movies, especially stuff like this, because the screen was so huge, and I thought IMAX was the best format to see it in. But seeing it in Dolby Vision, that is honestly the best I've seen it. So if you live, near an AMC and you always go to IMAX because it's the bigger screen, I would definitely recommend you at least check out the Dolby. Visually it pops more. It's brighter. The darkers are dark, the brighters are bright. The colors look better. Like I said, it pops. The sound is better. You can definitely, like when something's coming from the left, you feel it more, and the seats will vibrate because of the bass. So just Dolby Vision, seeing this like that, especially some of the soaring scenes, some of the scenes later in the movie were just drop dead beautiful. I mean, just stunning, just visually to look at. This, like I said, this movie is full of issues. So it's problematic for those reasons, but seeing that I got a kid, so I might buy this down the line if I get a nice big 4K TV or something like that, and I get a movie room in my house. I might buy this just because visually it's so pretty to look at, and it'd be nice to sit down and rewatch those scenes again.
Yep, I agree. I think it's almost photoreal in some parts. There's a few scenes where they're flying around the maelstrom, this waterfall thing in the movie, and the camera is pulled back just far enough that you can kind of just see the dragon, the outline of it, the silhouette, and you can see Hiccup and Astrid on top of the dragon, and it looks photoreal. Like it looks like a special effect from like a Marvel movie. Like it looks so good. The stuff they're doing with water now, which you can also kind of see in the Frozen 2 trailer, and also like the first movie that really got water was the otherwise terrible Good Dinosaur. That movie has water effects that are just amazing, but the movie itself isn't great. So like this was just like visually this movie blew me away. It's a step or two above the last one.
The mating scene we were talking about earlier when he's on the beach. I mean, it looks like you're looking at a beach.
Yeah. That's my favorite scene in the movie, by the way. Just throwing that out there.
Well, okay, we'll talk about that spoilers, but yeah, it was very pretty to look at.
I thought it was funny because they act like cats, but whatever. It's in the trailer, almost the whole scene, so we could talk more about its context later. I agree with you guys with the beauty of the movie. I really liked the Power Ranger dragon armor bits, so that's also in the trailer. I'm not spoiling anything, but all the characters have like dragon armor now, and they're kind of color coded, and they kind of look like Power Rangers, and I kind of dug that. I thought that was kind of fun. I also thought that the relationships, the core relationships are pretty strong. They, like Hiccup and Astrid, Hiccup and Toothless, that's all pretty good. But everything else, like with the characters, kind of you almost can't say something nice about this movie without saying something bad, is how I feel. So I will say that, like, I was hoping that the other characters would have more to do in this one, because they had nothing to do in the second one. And that was one of my big criticisms of that movie. But they really don't. They're all just like, they're all just there for a bit. Every side character has like a bit that they do. Some of them are pretty poor. We'll get into that in spoilers. And they don't have much else going on. But this is about the end of my like positive things for this movie.
What you, Sam?
Yeah, I mean, it visually stunning, completely soundtrack amazing, plot poor. I don't really have anything that I can say that's pretty positive outside of the soundtrack and that how visually appealing it was. I'm trying to think of something nice to say and I can't.
Indeed. Okay, well, I mean, I think at this point we really need to get into spoilers. Before we do, though, I want to go into recommendations. As I said, I mean, if you got a 5-year-old, if you're as terrible as it sounds, if you're okay to just turn your brain off and go watch a fun animated kids movie, I would recommend it because I think it's incredibly problematic if you think about it, deeper than just the basic script level or whatever, and you watch the movie for what it is. It is definitely problematic. That race issues aside, there are a lot of issues with the movie. It is poor on a few levels, but I mean, if you're a kid or you're just taking a kid to see a movie, I definitely recommend, this is a good kids movie to go see. They'll have a good time. They'll walk out clapping. So I would recommend it on that level. What about you, Evan?
I don't really I'll recommend it for completion's sake. Like it's worthwhile probably to finish the movies. But if you're just like a newcomer coming into How to Train Your Dragon for the first time and you're thinking, oh, now it's over, maybe I'll watch all of them. I almost can't say really skip this one and watch the other two, but I don't think it comes to a satisfying conclusion. I think that this third movie is pretty disappointing. You might as well just watch the second one twice, honestly. Sam?
Yeah.
You gonna recommend it after all or no?
No.
It's hard because it's a sequel, right?
Yeah. I mean, to finish off the trilogy, yeah, watch it, give it a go, to see how far visual effects have come since the first film, for sure. But no, I can't say that I'd recommend going to see this as a one-off.
Okay, well, that is our recommendation. So from this point forward, we're going to dig a little deeper into it. So spoilers for How to Train Your Dragon, The Hidden World.
Another night fury.
It's more like a bright
A light fury.
Yeah, yours is better, probably.
All right, now that we are in spoilers, I guess I'm just gonna, like I said, my last little bit about the race part. And everybody, I'm sorry if you're a racist, feel free to skip ahead 60 seconds. It'll be over quick. I don't know. She was literally a operative for the bad guy. So the fact that it's not just a white woman, quote unquote, with a black man. It's literally she's that femme fatale. The quintessential, the stereotype, evil, backstabbing white lady from a lot of black, type movies. And
hold on.
Yeah.
So she's not an agent. Like basically what happens is Grimmel lets her go because he knows that the mating thing is going to distract Toothless. And then he gives her the poison stuff that controls her mind later on. I kind of was confused too. I was like, is the Light Fury working for Grimmel? Is she like his dragon? But it's not. That it's a little muddled in the movie, to use your word. But I don't think she's actually... I don't think it's that. I don't know. This is pedantic.
Bait
maybe.
at the very least. I put it like
you're
that.
right. You're right. You're right.
I mean, he was tracking her. He knew where she was. Yeah, so that's why he set the trap. He was watching her the whole time.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
Whether she, had his serum and was being controlled, or whether he let her free and just hoped that she would, for whatever reason, fly close to him. Whatever's going on, like I said, the movie didn't make that clear. But either way, she was being used by the bad guy, and that was her role. So just the racial element of that, and her being the seductress and following him around and all that kind of stuff. It was, I don't know, it just really left a bad taste in my mouth. So yeah, that was my 60 seconds rant. I just wanted to add that,
I think it's kind of it was kind of insinuated in the film in the reason why she was following him around is that Toothless is literally the last Night Fury there is because he's hunted every other one into an extinction. So he's the last male that is available, and she's caught his scent because he walked past her cage at the start. So from a reproductive point of view, she is going to hunt him down because she's going to want to further her bloodline. So I think it's not very clear, but I think that's kind of like where he was coming from, because he knew that she was going to hunt Toothless down because... Well,
I want to push back on that, because I don't know if you guys noticed it, but when they did the Hidden World, which even... I feel like the Hidden World was pretty much the same size as the secret, nest from the last movie, but...
Anyway, yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So when they showed the Hidden World, when they showed her on top of the little ice rock crystal, whatever it is, when the camera quote unquote pan to the crowd, but there are white light furies in the crowd. So I don't know if necessarily he was the last Fury, period. Maybe he was the last black one. But yeah, like I said, if you're about to go see the movie tomorrow, and for whatever reason you're listening to the spoiler section, when they finally go to the hidden world, look at that scene and write in and let us know if I'm wrong.
Yeah, so I think even though like you're right, Sam, that like on a purely like logical level, it does make sense that she would like pursue him. It's still problematic in a different way because like the way the narrative works is that it parallels Toothless getting a girlfriend, that whole subplot, which is supposed to like, I didn't expect that to anchor the movie, but it kind of does. Like it seems like the whole movie's about that in a way. But it also is supposed to parallel Hiccup and Astrid finally getting their relationship figured out, which to me was a really weird choice because for one thing, if they're a loving couple that have been kind of together for a while, how does that parallel to two sentient dragons who are desperate because they're the last of their kind? It doesn't really it doesn't send a good message about like what a relationship is about. Although I can see that the movie's trying to be about that. How do you better yourself? Or how do you better your partner, and how does your partner better you? I got that from Hiccup and Astrid's story. But the parallel breaks because you're right about the logistics of the Light Fury and Toothless's whole deal. But yeah, I don't know why in the third movie we're still trying to figure out a will they, won't they with Hiccup and Astrid. It's a really weird place to hang their relationship, considering that it's just like we've watched them be together this whole time. Like why are they cold feeding about getting married and stuff? Like it's just a weird, But I mean that's not even the weirdest part. Like I want to talk about this in the non-spoilers, but it's kind of a spoiler. But like when I was talking about the side characters, their little bits, what is up with everybody wanting to bang Hiccup's mom?
Yeah,
like that subplot, that story, that beat goes nowhere, and it's weird, and it doesn't. It's not funny. It doesn't serve any purpose whatsoever, and it doesn't go anywhere. I thought that was super bizarre. Talk about inserting weird adult stuff into a kid movie. Like that was
I didn't
like that's the way that they were trying to include her in this movie.
I
because
know.
she was such a big deal last movie that they had to somehow show that she was still a part of the clan.
Yeah, what a crappy way to do it though, right?
I mean, of all the crappy
decisions,
that one's fine.
No, I disagree. Yeah. I think that's a big bad move for like, okay, so the only female character that's not in full age is there to be like this trophy that two younger men are fighting over. That's a bad look. Like that's borderline misogynistic. Yeah. Like that's a bad look.
That's a weird thing because she was so much older. I was like, I forgot the young Aerith, son of Aerith. Yeah. I was like, are they making him the love interest? It's like because he was a little bit older, she flirted with him just a little bit. So I was like, well, I guess since he's older, they can pair them up. I guess it's really weird, but at the end of the movie, she was just messing with both of them, so it really went nowhere. So why even include it?
Exactly. It's bizarre because it doesn't make her a powerful. Like it doesn't. They could have done a version of that where she's just kind of like you boys, like get out of here. Like I'm an independent woman, which is kind of what her story is in the second movie. But instead, they don't use it as a way to like reinforce her character, which would have been like it would have been okay, but it wouldn't have been strong either because then you're just basically why the character has no development then. So we'd still have a complaint to make about that character, but it wouldn't be as egregious as this is. I feel like the way they handle that stuff is just a bad look, period. And there's lots of that in this movie, lots of weird stuff they just couldn't seem to, I was like, did they even ask a woman what they thought while they were making and writing this movie? Like, what's her name? Cressida Cowell, is that her name? The writer of the original novels?
Yeah.
Like, what did she have to say about? But then again, I hear that the movies are very different from the novels, so I might be off on a wild goose chase there.
Yeah, but in the same breath, it's like how could Kate Blanchett and Jonah Hill read this script and think that was worth their time? How did they not turn around to the script writers and be like, "Are you having a laugh, mate?" Like, especially
Kate Blanchett. Like, I bet you it's contractual obligation. Like, they probably were contracted to do it. Probably did they're not in the movie much, so it could be just like a minimum work kind of thing, a minimum screen time sort of deal, and they just were like, screw it, But it's like that kind of comes across in the movie. It feels like almost nobody cares,
Yeah, I feel like this is a third movie. They're wrapping up the trilogy. Let's just get in here, get this check. It's fine. I don't think they're taking it apart. They were dissecting it and wanted to be a great movie. I feel like they read the script. Okay, whatever. It's okay. Let's do this and let's wrap it up.
And I think it's a bummer that they go that direction. Where like that's a huge bummer, you know? Because I know you don't like them that much, Sterling, but these movies were like DreamWorks's first and only good animated franchise that could compete with like Pixar, you know, in terms of like the cultural impact and like how much money they were making and all that stuff. You know, this was like a flagship series. So I know you're looking this up right now, Sterling.
Yeah, because DreamWorks is Shrek, DreamWorks is Kung Fu Panda, Madagascar. So I don't know if I agree with that.
That's true, but those movies don't compete, I don't think, with How to Train Your Dragon in terms of like critical,
crazy?
Just critical evaluation. I'm not just talking about
okay, yeah, well, you're talking about cultural impact. Kung Fu Panda and Shrek did way more.
Let's back this up a little bit. Don't forget that I like my film going circle is, and like my film criticism circle is a little bit more like you know, it's more hung up on whether something is good. So like for a long time, the consensus on these movies has been DreamWorks hasn't been able to get a series that has both the success financially and the pop culture impact and like decent, strong themes and good storytelling. The way that Pixar does, like almost every movie they make is got all of those things. Shrek has the pop culture impact and it made all the money in the bank, but those movies were dated the minute they came out and they're kind of shallow, right? Like you know, like they're not the same kind of thing. Neither is Kung Fu Panda, although Kung Fu Panda, for my money, is a better trilogy than How to Train Your Dragon is. You know, we can go on and on about DreamWorks, but I think How to Train Your Dragon was, if not their flagship series, then definitely, and I mean, don't forget, too, the last Shrek movie was years ago. So, like, it's kind of what's left. My point is that it's a bummer to release the last movie in a series. Even Kung Fu Panda 3, which wasn't as good as Kung Fu Panda 2, was not this weak. It still expanded on the world, gave a lot of character depth with the main characters, added a little bit for the side characters, did all the things that a good sequel should do. And this movie just seems to I don't know, man, drop the ball, I guess.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. It does. I don't understand how the screenwriters got to the third movie and thought we're going to do Dragon Catchers again. I don't understand the logic of the series.
Yeah.
And
Agreed.
it's just like, it's so...
You've seen that before.
I'm so bored of it. I'm just, as soon as it started mentioning Dragon Catchers at the start of the film, I almost got up and walked out. I was like, I don't want to sit through another hour and a half of them fighting dragons and doing the whole relationship thing. I wanted something different, and I was so disappointed because I was so looking forward to seeing it.
And the fighting looks cool for like a second or two, but then they just drop it. Like there's not really an action scene in this movie. And Toothless has no big awesome dragon to fight, so he has no antagonist. And so the ending scene where he like breaks out of the thing, it's just a recall to the first movie when he breaks out of the cage thing that Hiccup's dad puts him in. So there's just a lot of stuff like that where they just don't make anything bigger or cooler or more interesting, you know?
I will give a positive compliment to the movie, just like we talked about with Skyscraper, the disabilities here. I think both Toothless and Hiccup had really good storylines so far as that, because Hiccup was missing at least a portion of his leg, and at the beginning he kind of played fetch with the bottom of his leg, and so they never showed him being disabled, and they never showed it being a crutch to him. It's just part of who he is. And at the end when he sacrificed that little portion of his leg to save his life, he's like, this leg isn't me, it's just it's a tool I use, but I'm still me without the leg. So I think that was very positive. And same thing with Toothless, to where I think that whole first half before Hiccup gave him the fixed thing where he could fly on his own, the back portion of his tail, whatever. I think that really was a good demonstration of a person with disabilities just feeling that, that depression, I guess, because they did kind of show him before he had that love interest, he was okay needing Hiccup to get around. But then when he had that love interest, and her flying around and him just kind of being sullen when he couldn't get off the ground, I think that it really showed in, his, face or whatever, just the sadness, I'm not equal, I can't do this on my own. And then when they gave him the prosthetic, he became whole again, and he was joyed and all that kind of stuff. He just...
Some disabled people would have a big problem with that, though. Like, I'm not disabled, of course, and I don't know too many people who are, so I'm speculating here. So, somebody can write us in and let us know what they think about this, because I think you're right for the most part that it's a very positive perspective. But this is what troubled me about Toothless. I think it's too easy. He just makes like the whole thing with Toothless and Hiccup is that they needed each other to work together, and that's sort of what brings them together because they're both disabled and they kind of find common ground and they find like they can be whole together and there's this whole thing. And I know the movie wants to talk about like when it's time to let go of like a relationship that where it's in the other person's best interest, the other entity's best interest. But I don't think they do that well, and we'll talk about the ending later. But for one thing, it's really easy how they solve the problem of Toothless not being able to fly. It's just like, oh, he wants a girlfriend. He needs to impress his girlfriend. Okay, flap. Like now we got 5 seconds, and there's a quick little bit, and Hiccup fixes the problem.
They did, say that they tried to give him the thing earlier, but he didn't want it. But now he
That's
does.
true.
So,
That's
so
true.
It's not,
I think
not
there's
like
a
he
bit,
built it from scratch. So
that's a good
give him
point.
credit
And there's
for
a
that.
bit about that I think in the second movie too, where they try it. So maybe I'm wrong about that, but
I mean, I think. Well, speaking of that, I do want to kind of add that they are showing him to be as a genius, mechanical, whatever. I can build anything out of anything. And I don't think they did a whole lot with that either.
Right. Well, they tried though. The Grimmel, the bad guy, is supposed to be like a reflection of him. He also uses dragons. He also uses technology and gadgets, but they don't do a good job of that. Like that would have been so good if they could have made it more personal between them. If they could have like kind of zoomed in on their connection, the fact that they're very much alike in some ways. But like Grimmel is like the dark version of Hiccup. He's like what Hiccup could have been, but it's just not in the movie. Like you get it. You get the iconography of it. You get the like visual of the guy controlling dragons, and instead of being friends with dragons, he enslaves dragons, etc. It's there kind of, but they just really don't dot the I's and cross the T's with that, which is probably what bothered me about Grimmel the most, is that he's such a wasted opportunity as a villain. Because to me, it's a good idea to make your villain a reflection of the hero. The Marvel movies have been doing that forever. It's just a good idea, but they don't execute it super well, I don't think.
He was just not there.
He just wants to hunt dragons. Like that's it. Like that's all you got, movie.
Yeah, like what's the point? And why was he doing this for those guys anyway? Like if he was the badass that he said he was, why didn't he just turn around and be like, no?
Yeah, like I agree with you, and I think like what's weird about this movie too is I was thinking about the scene where they flash back to Hiccup and his dad, and they totally retcon this whole thing where Hiccup's dad secretly, I guess, wanted to send the dragons back to their own world. I'm working my way up to talking about the ending, but for now, like they do that, and before that, like everything we know about Hiccup's dad until Hiccup changes his mind is that he hates dragons and wants to kill them all. This whole idea about him wanting to take them to the hidden world is a retcon. If they can do that, why not give us some flashback personal?
They gave him a little bit watered down. He said he wanted to seal the hidden word off.
Yeah, you're right. But he still seemed to be more like, we don't deserve to, you know what I mean? Like the dragons shouldn't live with us. We can't live together. And what I think is kind of messed up with this movie, now I can get into the ending, is that they endorse that. This idea of not being able to live together, that you have to segregate.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's really bizarre to me and hollow. And like, I know the ending, the very ending where Hiccup brings his family to see Toothless's family is supposed to sort of like ease that a little bit, but it didn't for me. I thought it was just
it was really random social commentary. The last movie was we can get along, and then this one was we're not ready to get along. We don't deserve it yet as humans.
So in that case, who are the dragons supposed to be? Like, are they supposed are the dragons and the Burke people supposed to be like two competing communities that can't live together and have to be separated? Like, is it an Israel-Palestine thing? Like you know what I mean? Like, there's something xenophobic about this movie that I can't quite put my finger on. And I would have thought that it was my own filter, like me looking for things, but I've seen actually quite a few reactions, at least to the second movie, that kind of are starting to question, what are these movies doing with this stuff? And so I'm starting to think it's a pattern.
How'd you feel about the very end, Sam?
I didn't get it. I'm still sat here trying to process it, I think, because I only saw this a couple of hours ago. I haven't really sort of like kind of got my mind around what happens. I'm kind of like still processing it, but yeah, I'm with Evan on this. I don't really understand like the kind of like social commentary, so to say, on the segregation of dragon and humankind. Like, I mean, they spent the whole movie series up to this point being like, oh, we can live together, we can live in harmony, we can be friends. Look, dragons are just like us. Like we can be friends. They're just misunderstood. And now it's like, humans are crap. Let's just go back to your hole in the ground.
It's kind of bleak. Like it ends in this place where it's like humans suck, but we'll get better someday.
Yeah.
And like from like an execution point of view, I thought the ending, like Hiccup's voiceover
Okay, yeah, I had a huge problem with that voiceover.
Yeah, I thought it was really especially bad in this movie. It's always kind of bad. Jay Baruchel just wasn't put on this earth to do voiceover, but it's every movie has him narrating the beginning and the end. But in the end, in this one, he goes on forever. He never shuts up, and it just reinforces how trite the ending is.
No, I mean that I didn't necessarily have the problem with. My problem was he was saying some humans don't even believe they exist. Some humans believe they were fairy tale. He's like 10 years older. His kids are like 5 and 6. Okay, this isn't 100, 200 years ago where humans have lost the
Of
proof.
course, the logic bothered you.
There's this was all the dragons close to the hidden world or whatever. There's still probably dragons out there. If not, they're dragon bones. This was like 15, at tops. Maybe they waited 10 years to have kids or whatever. This is 15 years later tops. Okay.
It's ridiculous because it's almost like they're doing that fantasy movie thing like that King Arthur and Robin Hood did, where they try to pretend this is the real world, but this is the before time, the long, long ago. And these people with the dragons became regular Vikings that eventually went on to rape and kill their way across Europe. And then all the Chinese and Mongolian coded people go back to their homelands, and everybody just forgets about dragons and the like imperial era ships. It's all very ridiculous. If you're gonna have the dragons anyway, there's no reason for one thing for all the Burke people to be white. That's one thing. There's no reason to have your people of color only be villains or dragons. And then there's this whole idea of like sealing the dragons away because humanity's not good enough. You don't need to do that. It just felt like a way of them trying to wrap it up in a nice, neat way.
And it turned the family into like the secret keepers. Now there's a family that goes down from generation to generation, and maybe in 20 years they can make that movie. We've kept the secret our whole lives, but dragons exist, and now humans are ready, or whatever nonsense they come up with. So I thought, the ending was silly,
and the dragons are literally living in a hole in the ground in the middle of the ocean. I mean, people are literally traversing the globe by boat at this point in time. Like, how is no one coming across this hole in the ground and thinking, why is there a massive random waterfall right in the middle of the sea? Like, we should see what's down here. Like, and then also you've named the movie The Hidden World, and we get 10 minutes.
Not even. It's like a quick it's a quick montage of them flying into it, which is admittedly pretty cool, although it is a rehash of the secret dragon nest in the second or first movie.
Yeah.
So Sterling's right about that. But like then we get this whole thing where Toothless is the king, and then that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. And then it's kind of like when I was in there as well, and I was thinking about the title of the film, The Hidden World. I was literally sat there before the film started thinking, did I not just watch this one and the second one? Like, wasn't that called The Hidden World? And then I couldn't remember what it was called. And then when we started watching it, and I was like, this is the same film. Like, this is literally the same film.
If I watch it, like, I'm glad that I didn't watch the second one again right before watching this one. I was thinking about doing it, and I didn't. And I'm glad I didn't, because if I did, I would have hated it like 10 times more, I think.
Okay, let me just pile on the ending since we're ranting about it. So when they do meet up at the end, he sniffs them for a bit before he remembers them. So that leads us to believe he didn't know who he was when the boat pulled up. So why was Toothless there with his wife and his kids? Did they just sit there and just chill? Are they the gatekeepers? He brings his kid out to protect the land?
Yeah, it's
that
too
made
convenient.
no sense. Yeah, and then on top of that, so that I guess this adds to your point earlier about them mixing the Night Furies and the White Furies or whatever. Because now his kids aren't like a gray color or whatever. They're Dalmatians.
I know.
Black and white spotted.
Yes.
So
I was waiting for your
the rules just fall apart here. So I'm just race stuff aside. Now they're spotted. So she is an albino, but they just never mentioned she was an albino. She's not an albino because albino's just lack of melanin.
No,
so
they're
kids
like
will come out
dogs.
regular. Yeah,
They're like like.
It's just what the rules.
Yeah. That stuff doesn't bother me as much, except for the optic stuff. Like, I mean, there's that. Do you ever see? Okay, so what it reminded me of was the movie Treasure Planet. Did you ever see that?
Yeah. I actually like that.
Yeah, it's. I think it's a great movie. But in Treasure Planet, there's this bit where the dog and cat aliens, they have kids. And then their kids some of them are dogs and some of them are cats. And it's like, it's the kind of kids movie logic that doesn't bother me, but it's also, in that particular case, really hilarious. And I think in How to Train Your Dragon 3, if it wasn't for the weird racial coding and the weird sexualization of the Light Fury and all that kind of stuff, I don't think it would have been a big deal that they have splotchy skin. Like, I don't think that would have really bothered anybody but you. But I think, like, what do you make of it in terms of this idea that it's like there's like some racial coding going on here? Like, what is the idea there where they're like, you're not white or black or some mix, you're actually this weird splotchy.
That's the race mixing, we're promoting black people and white people getting together kind of thing, but we don't want to go so far as to have mixed kids, so it's just fun kiddie. So we're saying it but not saying. I don't know. It was problematic for me. So I don't want to go on a rant. We've kind of been over this. We've dug it into the ground. You know how I feel about this. I mean, at the end of the day, Evan, kind of, what are your final thoughts on the movie?
I called it a rehash quill earlier, and I think me and Sam have echoed a lot of the same problems where it felt like a movie we had already seen because they just can't stop recycling stuff from the earlier movies, and way beyond the point where it makes sense for a sequel. But I think the one thing I didn't mention that is the most damning part of this, like we kind of talked around it, but to me, is the low stakes. Everything is too easy in this movie. Nobody has to die for there to be stakes, but it was significant that Hiccup's dad died in the first movie or second movie. There's like significant cost to the heroes. And in this movie, giving up the dragons and kind of slapping the whole premise of this trilogy before that point in the face and saying, nope, that doesn't work. That is the only loss that we feel. And so the rest of the movie up to the last 5 minutes is so low stakes that it almost feels like, like you're watching somebody play a game on God mode.
Yikes.
Yeah.
All right, Sam, what about you? Final thoughts?
I'm the same as Evan. Like, this film was just a rehash of the second one. There was nothing new about it. The plot was the same. Nothing, again, like Evan was saying, there's nothing high stakes. I just completely agree with everything Evan just said, basically. But I wanted something completely new. I wanted it to be a massive, like, let's say goodbye to Toothless. Let's, say goodbye to the series. Like, this is it. This is the end. Let's go out with a bang, basically. And it fizzled. It just was a complete misfire. If there was a writer's strike going on, I could kind of see why they would rehash something, but we're not in the middle of a writer's strike. So why is there nothing new about this? I don't get it.
And me, again, I think my biggest issue with the movie is I have to turn off all of my filters to enjoy it. Once everything is turned off, I think it's it's okay. I recommend kids go watch it. But once I start taking it apart, then I get heated up, and a movie shouldn't do that. I don't know if that's a me thing or this movie thing, but the more I take it apart, the bigger the issues I have with it. So I have to kind of turn off all my thoughts and just enjoy it at a kid's level. And at that level, I do think it's an okay movie to watch. But yeah, all right. Well, I think that is all the thoughts we have on How to Train Your Dragon: The New World. Hope you enjoyed that. You can find more episodes on Spotify, Stitcher, Pocket Cast, and pretty much any other podcast app.
What are we doing next week?
Next week we're actually going to do a bit of a fun one. Nobody cares too much about the Oscars, so instead of doing the usual recap of what was snubbed and what wasn't, we kind of want to take a step back and just do an episode on our overall top five most overrated movies and our top 5 underrated movies. So should be some fun conversation next week, so tune in for that. Again, next week we are going to announce the winner of our little contest, so don't forget to write in to sirrsmovies@gmail.com or join the Sirr's Movies Facebook group and write a little post about what your favorite animated movie was and why. Again, the winner will receive a copy of Black Panther. All right, don't forget to follow us on Twitter at Sirr's Movies as well. And I guess that's it. Where can we find more of your work on the internet, Evan?
You can find me writing spoiler-free reviews on sirwaka.com. Should have another one up next week, but we are working on what movie that will be. You can also find me at thunderclam.wordpress.com. That's my personal blog. And you can @ me, Evan Todd-McCoy on Twitter, at Evan Todd-McCoy, all one word, lowercase. How about you, Sam? Where can we find you?
You can find me tweeting nothing on Twitter, Sam_Jayne with a Y. You can also find me on Instagram, posting nonsense mostly, at JustBase. And I do have a blog spot as well where I post short stories, basically, which is Insomniac Ramblings at blogspot.com if you're interested at all in my poor writing skills.
Indeed, I checked it out, and you can find me at Sirr Waka on Twitter. Don't forget to check out the website, sirrwaka.com, SIRRWAKA. Thank you for listening, guys, and we will see you next week.